It seems like every day another sexual assault allegation is being broadcasted to us through the media. During this rise of the Me Too movement, men like Harvey Weinstein and Larry Nassar mistreat and abuse women. Women are finally stepping forward and having the courage to share their stories of assault. This societal change of women banding together, no longer looking at each other as competition, is one of the greatest impacts of this movement. But in order for this unity to truly make a difference, it needs to happen earlier. We cannot wait until after we are adults and have already been abused. For this movement to have an effect, we need for girls to develop empathy for each other at a younger age. The target we need to hone in on is teenage girls. If we are going to fully embrace a Time's Up movement for women, we first need a call for Time's Up on the girl-on-girl drama that takes place from tween years and onward. It is this very hate that makes it almost impossible for women who have been grown on childhood enmity to embrace sisterhood as adults. Teenage girls are notorious for rumors, clickiness, and lies. They are cruel and competitive in how they treat each other. As a teenage girl, I believe exclusion is one of the most damaging forms of wounding a young girl's spirit. Best-selling author of Odd Girl Out, Rachel Simmons once phrased it, "There is no gesture more devastating than the back turning away." Self-esteems are shattered as the rejection continues, and I believe that the lack of self-confidence within women is one of the leading causes to the sexual assault crisis that is being exposed around the world. This situation is much larger than not being able to sit at a lunch table. Girls learn to feel alone in their shame. This is a tactic they learn all the way back in elementary school in order to fit in. As I stand here today, by no means am I an expert. I am just a young girl who is currently crossing the bridge between girlhood and womanhood. And during this transition, I have realized that I have the opportunity to make the situation better, not only for myself, but for my community. Now, in the past, I have hesitated speaking out about such a personal struggle. But as I prepare to leave for college, I have realized that I can help other girls in their pain, and this is something I have to take action on. My story of girl drama is not any different or more significant than what many other girls suffer. But for me, mine was heartbreaking. It's just yet another example of how girls are indirect in their conversation and continually exclude each other. So I experienced rejection from my girlfriends at a time when I really needed their support. This past summer, I had my first high school love. Things were exciting, intense, and fast. And I really wanted my girlfriends to help me process the emotions I was going through, sheer joy as well as a fear for growing so attached. Instead of help and instead of advice, I was met with silence. Instead, I found out that my girlfriends were all talking about me behind my back, about my promiscuity, my disloyalty to them as friends, and about the fact that I seemed to have an independent life of my own that didn't completely revolve around them. And as I struggled to maintain my commitments of 2 jobs and a boyfriend, I still strived to be the best friend I could be. Yet nothing ever seemed to be enough for my friends. So one weekend, when the girls and I decided to go down the shore, I focused my full energy on rebonding and rekindling our relationships. So, after a successful day at the beach, I hesitantly asked my friends if it would be okay if I spent a little bit of time with my boyfriend that evening. And surprisingly, They encouraged me to go. It wasn't until I returned an hour later that I realized that they had locked the door to the apartment, refusing to let me inside in fear that there were too many people in case the landlord checked. So without my car keys, my money, and my clothing, they left me on the sidewalk with no bit of remorse on their part. The worst part of my story actually takes place the next day when I returned. My girlfriends never even acknowledged the fact that I was ever gone. At this point, I felt so weak and inferior. I didn't even have the courage to confront the girls on their actions from the night before. Instead, I cowered away, and I was just glad that my friends had reaccepted me as a friend for this day. So long after the boyfriend was out of the picture, there was still a disconnect in our relationship with my friends that I couldn't seem to repair. The more I tried to reach out and make plans, the more unwelcome I felt. It came to a point where I felt as though I was always treading on thin ice around them, that anything I would say was just being joked about or criticized seconds after I left a room. So I decided it was easier if I didn't talk, easier if I kept my stories bundled inside. They had managed to silence me. Now, I know you all didn't come here to listen to a teenage sob story, but these come a dime a dozen. Every time I share one of my stories of hurt with other girls, I watch light bulbs flick off as they're brought back to their own memories of trauma and exclusion. I still fear the thought of my friends ever watching this talk. I am not yet over the scars they have marked on me. But with this new wave of solidarity and change for women, I have hope that our relationships as girls will change as well. Girl drama seems to be ingrained in our society, but it does not have to stay that way. We can learn to intervene and to put an end to its reign. Intervening on a larger scale can be confronting the bully straight on, challenging her malicious behaviors. But on a smaller scale, intervening can just be introducing yourself to a victim, proving to her that there are other positive people out there for her to depend on. I actually intervened within my own town through my dance school. Now, I'm sure you've all heard the rumors and stereotypes about dancers. Little girls in pink ballet shoes are taught to point their toes, grab the spotlight, and disregard all others. In a world full of girl hate, I'm pretty sure a dance studio is one of the most competitive and cliquey places for an adolescent girl. Our narcissistic society is spoon-fed media like Mean Girls and Dance Moms, where girls are pitted against each other as a form of amusement. Sounds inviting, right? So I was never the best dancer, and I did not come here to lecture you about my tap recitals. But it was in that very dance studio where I was first introduced to girl hate. Now, this girl hate can be small, like not being invited to plans after a performance, or being the only girl not having anyone to sit with on the team bus ride. Feminist YouTuber Lily Singh coined the term girl-on-girl hate to describe the way girls bully and degrade each other in order to gain superiority. So, as a 15-year-old dancer at the Institute of Dance Artistry, I decided to light a match to this unquestioned cycle of girl-on-girl hate. No longer did I wish to feed into the dance girl drama. I deserved better in my relationships, and so did my teammates. We deserved relationships that would build us up rather than tear us down. My first order of business was the invisible, yet seemingly impenetrable walls between girls of different ages. Even as the younger girls grew up, they did not learn from the hurt and exclusion they had experienced. Instead, they molded into the same petty, cliquey, and conniving group of older girls they had just spent years resenting. With this in mind, I started the Big Sister, Little Sister program. This program sought to pair each senior dancer up with a dancer at least 3 years younger than her. So now, when the younger girls gazed up at their role model peers with admiration, they received warm embraces rather than cold shoulders. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. At first, it was extremely difficult to get the seniors to buy into my plan. They whined and complained and saw no purpose in having a few weekly conversations with a middle schooler. But as Secret Santas gave way to pizza parties, bonds began to form. This situation is not just a problem in the dance studios. It needs to be addressed in our classrooms, on the soccer fields, and in our society as a whole. It is my hope that one day all girls will be able to grow up with the reliable frameworks in place to feel loved, accepted, and appreciated. We will learn how to avoid those unworthy of us and only seek out those who motivate us. Although my ideas will not eradicate sexual assault, hopefully they will limit much of its damage by teaching girls to feel good about themselves and teaching them that they deserve better. So now this is where the leaders of the Me Too and Time's Up movement come into my picture. Don't forget about us younger girls. Instead of only looking at how men mistreat women, let's first look at how girls treat each other. Instead of waiting until the damage is already done, let's prevent future victims. Maybe, if we start early enough, engendering a culture of inclusivity at the lunch table and at ballet class, a culture where our Me Too movement no longer is forced to be founded on our mutual victimization. And where I'm concerned, a culture where teenage girls don't lock each other out, but invite each other in. So let's think about this. If my teenage girlfriends weren't able to listen to my stories about my first love without judgment, how can I ever expect to confide in women when there's huge traumatic instances in my life, like a sexual assault? Judgment and jealousy have no place in our lives over support and acceptance. If we let love prevail, together, we can end girl-on-girl hate, and we will never be silenced again. Thank you.